RS 0613.
All right. RS 0613, are there any objections?
I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm introducing this on behalf of KDADS. Thank you very much. I didn't
Behalf of
complete it.
KDADS, any objections? No objections. We'll consider that request. Any other requests for bill drafts? No other requests? All right. Committee, we're going to go ahead and move to budget report outs. We're going to begin with a Chairperson Mosier with the A&R budget.
Thank you, Jill.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. We're going to start with the Kansas Department of Credit Unions this morning. The focus of the credit unions is to protect Kansas citizens from undue risk by ensuring safe and sound operation of the 44 state chartered credit unions and the one corporate credit union. What they do, they are empowered to conduct examinations, grant new charters, approve mergers, and provide for liquidation procedures when necessary. State chartered credit unions are required to be examined at least every 18 months. The agency stated that they try to never go past 15 months, and the larger credit unions are evaluated every 12 months. So if you want to go to page 2 of the committee report, the agency requests a revised estimate of $1.4 million, all from the credit union fee fund. This is a fee fund organization. The estimate is $42,000 or 2.9% below the amount approved by the 2024 legislature. And the decrease is primarily attributable to decreases in salaries and wages because they have vacancies that they continue to not be able to fill. There are also decreases in, or increases in contractual services, which includes meals, lodging, and job-related training for travel to conduct credit union examinations and callbacks. And then there were also increases in other adjustments, which includes stationery, other supplies, miscellaneous. The LBC concurred with the agency's budget, as did the A&R committee. With that, I'll stand for questions.
All right, thank you, Representative Mosier. Any questions for Chairman Mosier? No questions. You may proceed to 2026.
Okay, 2026 reads much the same. A $1.4 million ask from the fee fund, showing a decrease of $21,000 or 1.5% below the fiscal year 2025 approved amount. Again, the decreases in salary and wages because they're not able to get people hired, and also due to the request of purchasing an agency vehicle, which did not happen. These decreases are offset by increases in contractual services again, including meals and lodging for job-related trainings and conferences. The examiners go on trainings till they get certified, and a lot of them are getting to the point where they are, and so the training expenses are going down. The LBC concurred with the department's ask, as did the A&R Budget Committee. And with that, I'll stand for questions.
All right, thank you, Representative. Do we have any questions? No questions. All right, Chairman, you may close on those budgets.
We have 27 yet, too.
Apologies, 27.
Okay. The agency requests, again, $1.4 million from the fee fund. It is 4.5% lower than the 2025 amount. Again, like prior years, decreases in salary and contractual services. According to the agency, like I just mentioned, most of the financial examiners are expected to have completed their specialized training, and thus the training expenses for travel and conferences is down. The extra, an adjustment in for stationery, other supplies adds up to $6,088, and so the LBC approved the 2027, as did the A&R Budget Committee. And with that, I'll stand for questions.
All right, thank you, Chair. Yes, Representative Sutton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just looking at the fee fund resources estimate here going from 23 to 27, see it more than doubling from 23 to 27. Are there any plans to keep that thing from becoming a behemoth?
Thank you for that question. It is generally getting a bit high, and I don't know that I can tell them they have to do something, but it is
Yeah, you
getting high, and so they do need to, keep it on balance, like the representative from Hayes mentioned earlier this week about, fee funds remaining relatively low. So yes, I did have that highlighted, that it could become an issue.
Well, very good. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yes, and maybe that's one of those global considerations at some point about adjusting fee funds automatically when they exceed or double or triple in amounts. Yes, Representative Sutton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would, obviously be hesitant to ever say the S word, but that's exactly what starts becoming a topic of conversation when fee funds get out of hand. So I probably, as their budget chair, urge you to explain that reality of political life, and then say that, and then maybe some of the fees that are being paid by the credit unions themselves could be adjusted downward in order to keep that fund from becoming, from raising its head out of the foxhole.
Thank you. Point well taken.
Thank you.
Representative or Chair Mosier, yes, we have another question, and then I will also add one. Representative Wassinger.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Silly question. What is a natural person credit union fee? I figured we all were.
I think that's, they're owned
I understand. I
by-
understand.
by a group of people instead of being owned by a corporation. We have one corporate-owned credit union in the state. The
Okay.
other 44 are owned by the members they serve.
Okay.
Member-owned.
All right, thank you.
And Chair Mosier, if you would clarify on page 9, maybe your committee discussed this, but there's a little notation that says these fees were changed within the last 2 fiscal years, and it's by previous fees, but there are no fees listed. So can you remind us maybe what that actually is indicating?
Oh. Okay, so it would have a double asterisk if it was changed. And so where it just has a line, that means it was not changed.
Right. All right, thank you. Any other questions for Chair Mosier? All right, Chair Mosier, now you may close on your 3 budgets.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. I move that the Committee on Agriculture and Natural Resources budget recommendations to the House Committee on Appropriations be adopted for the Kansas Department of Credit Unions for fiscal years 2025, 2026, and 2027, as provided for in HB 2007.
All right, is there a second? Second by Representative Hoffman. Any discussion? All those in favor of passing out the Kansas Department of Credit Unions budgets 25 through 27, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay? All right, motion carries. Next item of business is the Office of the State Bank Commissioner. We're back to Chairperson Mosier.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. The Office of the State Bank Commissioner ensures the integrity of regulated providers of financial services through responsible and proactive oversight. They protect consumers from unfair or unscrupulous credit practices and promote public trust in the state financial system by educating consumers. The commission is headed by one commissioner who's appointed by the governor to serve a 4-year term, and there is a 9-member banking board that make up the state bank commissioners. If you look on page 2, 2025, the agency requests a revised estimate of $13.8 million, all from the Bank Commissioner Fee Fund and the Consumer Education Settlement Fund. The revised estimate is $4 below the amount approved by the 2024 legislature. Imagine. The decrease reflects several adjustments across the budget, There are decreases in salary and benefits, including temporary unclassified positions and employer contributions to health benefits, leave payments, unemployment compensation, and Social Security. The agency has been converting its temporary unclassified positions to regular unclassified positions. Additionally, there are increases in contractual services due to attorney fees, computer software rental, computer software maintenance service, advertising, and other assistance. And that other assistance is grant funding for educators, nonprofits, and other entities that provide consumer education programs to Kansas consumers. And that money comes specifically from the Consumer Education Settlement Fund. The LBC concurred with the agency's budget, as did the A&R Budget Committee. And with that, I'll stand for questions on 2025.
Thank you, Chair Mosher. Are there any questions? No questions. You may proceed to the next budget.
Okay, 2026, the agency again requests $13.9 million from those two funds. It's an increase of $109,000 or 0.8% above the 2025 approved amount. The increases are primarily attributable to contractual services, including attorney fees, again, the software, travel, subsistence, and advertising, and an increase in the other assistance for consumer education, the $50,000, like 2025. These increases are offset by decreases in all other adjustments, which includes some microcomputer equipment. The LBC concurred with the agency's request, as did the A&R Budget Committee. And with that, I'll stand for questions on 26.
All right. Are there any questions? Yes, Representative Sutton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This isn't a critique. I'm just kind of curious about the conversation surrounding the agency requesting a deletion of $14,000. Did you guys talk about? Not that I object. I'm just curious as to how that conversation went.
Let me find page 5 of the budget summary. The other adjustments.
Right.
Yes, there was, I didn't realize this, but it costs more to pay temporary unclassified positions than it does regular. And the agency's moving from the temps to regular unclassified, so they're saving more money in wages.
Interesting.
And they, let's see, decrease spending on capital outlay expenditures, including the microcomputer equipment. And also, there are some increasing expenses that includes data processing supplies, and that's kind of offset by the expenditure category in 2026. So,
Right. And I know this is just a budget catch-all sort of name, but what's a data processing supply? Any idea? Or what might fall under that? I have a feeling there's a lot of things that could fall into that category. I'm just curious if that would really be more of a staff question, I think, because it is a broad heading.
Chair Mosher?
I see Dylan chomping at the bit over here.
We're going to ask that question to Dylan.
Madam Chair, so it really depends on the agency, what it falls into that category, but it's any of the consumables, okay, that are involved. And it's not like paper, because paper is its own sort of entity, but notepads and other different types of, like if you have a special book that you use to track transactions at that agency, and for each different agency, it's going to vary, depending upon the needs of that particular agency.
Is that satisfactory?
Clear as mud.
All right. Any further questions, Representative?
Thank you, Madam Chair.
No? Any further questions for Chair Mosher? Chair Mosher, you may move on to 2027.
so I might note that all those other adjustments is affectionately called rats and cats by KLRD person Luke Drury, and I appreciate that. So, okay, on to 2027. Whoops, wrong page. Wrong pamphlet, I guess. They requested $13.9 million, again, all from the Bank Commissioner Fee Fund and the Consumer Education Settlement Fund. It's a 1.1 increase, primarily attributable to contractual services. And that 109,000 is a bit of a reserve fund to work through issues that might come about because of the TEFI investment vehicle. That's a brand, I mean, it's basically new, and so there's no history on it, so they want to be prepared in case they do have to assess situations. Travel and subsistence, computer software maintenance, advertising, and computer software rentals. Again, the 50,000 for consumer education. No enhancements. The LBC concurred with their 2027 request, as did the A&R Budget Committee. And I might also mention that there was no change, no ask for board member compensation for any of these years. So with that, I'll stand for questions.
Any questions for Chair Mosier? Yes, Representative Wassinger.
One thing I'd like you to ask them is that I heard last night that they are charging fees well and above what they need to and refunding people, but they're holding on to other people's money longer. So I'll get more detail on that. But if you talk to anyone from that committee or that
At fees as far
Agency.
as,
bank fees to different banks. And all right, I'll get more information. I'll get that to you.
Representative
Thank
Sutton,
you.
did you want to discuss the fee fund?
I wasn't going to go there just yet.
Okay.
But I.
Okay, there you
I like
go.
the way you think, Madam Chair. First I thought I was going to go one route, and it turns out maybe I'm not. I'm looking at capital outlay. I'm seeing a reduction due to the no longer having to purchase an agency vehicle, and that's fantastic. I don't see the agency vehicle in the previous budgets, though, as a line item.
they have not done anything with it. I mean, they had planned to, but they have not. And so vehicles are traded based on mileage.
Right.
And so they're continuing to use that vehicle that they had intended to trade. And so as you see the dollars go up for that potential trade, it's due to the price of the new vehicle or the fact that we're putting more miles on the current vehicle and it's not worth as much.
Okay, so this reduction of $35,000 reflects them not buying a vehicle that was previously budgeted. Is that right?
I believe that's correct.
Okay, I don't see where it's previously budgeted.
That would have been in the first part of 2025. It was before these budgets came to me.
So in
Because the
20
first number I see about trading a vehicle is the $800.
Okay,
And that is,
that was in 26, wasn't it?
or maybe I have my budgets confused. Maybe that was with the credit union. It was with the credit union, sorry.
Okay. Oh, maybe they share. Little appropriation joke there. So, and really, it's largely immaterial where it showed up. I'm assuming at some point that money was added in for a vehicle and now got removed. And that's exactly the way in that situation, given that premise, that's exactly the way that should work. My concern, and this is more of a universal statement, is if there's something like that where we have a one-time spend, we need to note it in the budget as a one-time spend so that 35,000 isn't rolled over into ongoing budgets year after year after year, and then maybe at some point taken out. And how many years has that been in there? I don't have any idea. Was it carried over an additional $35,000 every single year? Again, I don't have any idea. Maybe yes, maybe no, but for a one-time spend, it shouldn't be an adjustment to the budget that carries over. That's the point that I'm trying to make there.
Thank you, Representative. I don't know how many vehicles they might have, but they have 114 FTEs, so I'm not sure how many they would have. And so it may or may not be one time for that particular vehicle. So point needed. Any other questions for Chair?
Not from me. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay. Any other questions for Chair Mosier? And if you have follow-up information, if that could be provided to Representative Sutton, that'd be great.
Okay.
No other questions? Well, then I will note that that fee fund did rise, or is on a steady rise. Do we have historical information? Is the $3 to $4 million a typical fee fund balance for the State Bank Commission?
So if you look at figure 14 on page 9 of your, the summary, the budget summary, you'll notice that the revenue was 18 million and expenditures were 13 million. So that's a 25% balance, which is, I was told by the analysts that that's relatively normal.
All right, good to know. Any further questions? Chair Mosier, you may close on your State Bank Commissioner budgets.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. I move that the Committee on Ag and Natural Resources budget recommendations to the House Committee on Appropriations be adopted for the Office of the State Bank Commissioner for fiscal years 2025, 2026, and 2027 as provided for in House Bill 2007.
Is there a second? There is a second by Representative Wassinger. Further discussion? All right, no further discussion. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? And the motion carries. Thank you, Chair Mosier.
Thank you.
And I will note that a lot of times I'm asking just basic questions, but I know they're difficult to answer. And I think personally that our chairs this year are doing extraordinarily well. So I want you to know that you are doing such a great job, and I appreciate that. Okay, committee, we're going to go ahead and move into our next budget report out by Chairperson Higher Education Budget, Board of Regents. Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the Kansas Board of Regents, for those that are new to the committee, just want to let you know that they're composed of 9 members appointed by the governor, and the Board of Regents is responsible for the coordination of all post-secondary education in the state and supervising the operation of 6 universities. There's greater detail in the budget summary if you are inclined to read further on that. But in the essence of time, we'll move to the Budget Committee report. The Higher Education Budget Committee worked on the budget recommendations for the Kansas Board of Regents just yesterday, and I want to thank the KLRD and reviser staff for working above and beyond to get us this report today. So on the first page, I just want to bring to your attention, there's 2 tables, and if you look at the first table on either one for state operations, that's going to be the funding of the administration of the Kansas Board of Regents office staff, the administration of coordinating higher education in the state of Kansas. And you see some larger numbers in the tables where it says state aid and assistance. And a lot of that money is attributable to pass-through dollars for community colleges and tech colleges and such. So I'm going to start with fiscal year 25, Madam Chair, the Budget Committee report. So the agency revised estimates of $427.1 million, including $407.2 SGF. The revised estimate is $85 million, or 16.6% below the 25 approved amount. This is primarily attributable to an increase of $467,000 SGF for supplemental request, including $358,000 for Excel and CTE, $3,925 for AOK reimbursement, $96,440 for GED accelerator payments, and $8,567 for AOK course materials, and $8.1 million for Washburn student financial aid. This is offset by multiple decreases for line item appropriations in fiscal year 25, approved, transferred from the Board of Regents to the institutions, including $20 million SGF for state capital renewal, $54 million for educational building fund allocations, $8.5 million for the NISS academic playbook, $4.2 million for need-based aid and scholarships, and $1.7 million for IT and cybersecurity. The transfers to other agencies are partially offset by an increase of $1.1 million, including $191,777 SGF for all other adjustments. So the Special Committee on Legislative Budget concurred with the agency's revised estimate in fiscal year 25 with the following adjustments: to delete $3.9 million in SGF reappropriations for computer science programming, the nurse educator program, and nursing student scholarship in fiscal year 25. Number 2, delete $67,622 in EDIF fund reappropriations for EPSCoR and tech innovation internships in fiscal year 25. Number 3, delete $467,000 SGF for the 4 supplemental requests in fiscal year 25, and to delete 5 FTE positions. The Higher Education Budget Committee concurred with the LBC's recommendation in fiscal year 25 with one exception, one adjustment, I should say, to add $358,836 for Excel and CTE reimbursement payments in fiscal year 2025. So that is for courses that were already delivered, and that's based off of the 3-year average for academic year 22, 23, and 24. Mr. Chair, I'll stand for any questions the committee may have.
All right, committee, are there any questions for Chairman Howe in regards to fiscal year 2025? And I see from the governor's recommendation that the committee made the same recommendation as the governor in regards to the Excel and CTE courses. Is that correct?
That is correct, Mr. Chairman.
Any questions? Seeing none, you may move on to fiscal year 2026.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The agency requests $697 million, including $583.6 million SGF for fiscal year 2026. The agency request is $205.5 million, or 41.8% above the fiscal year 25 approved amount. This increase is primarily due to enhancements totaling $273.2 million SGF, including $90.1 million for student affordability, $10.5 million for technical college operating grants, $20 million for IT and cybersecurity, $21 million for the regional growth and development for the 3-year institution, or the 3 regional institutions, $20 million for IT and cyber, I jumped a line. I'm sorry about that. Okay. $51 million for the One Health request, $10 million for KU School of Architecture, $10.5 million for the hired pilot program, $6.4 million for the NISS academic playbook, and $53.7 million for other university enhancement requests. It's partially offset by a decrease in fiscal year 25 approved line items transferred from the Board of Regents to the universities, including $17.5 million for 2-year college student success initiatives, $14.3 million for 2-year college apprenticeships, $14 million for IT and cybersecurity, $8.5 million for NISS playbook and other line item adjustments. The request includes an increase of $9 million from the Educational Building Fund for anticipated capital improvement and maintenance expenditures. The Special Committee on Legislative Budget concurred with the agency's revised estimate for fiscal year 26 with the following adjustments. Number 1, delete $273.2 million SGF and enhancement request for fiscal year 26. Number 2, delete 5 FTE positions for fiscal year 26. And the House Committee on Higher Education Budget concurred with the LBC's recommendation for fiscal year 2026 with the following adjustments. Number one, delete 10 million SGF for the Kansas Blueprint for Literacy for fiscal year 2026. Number two, add 3.9 million SGF for the tuition technical education and add language to allocate funding to designated schools for fiscal year 26. Number three, add 4 million SGF for post-secondary tiered education state aid and add language to allocate funding for designated schools for fiscal year 26. Number four, delete 823,000 SGF from the non-tiered course credit courses and add language to allocate funding to designated schools for fiscal year 26. Number five, add 14.3 million SGF for 2-year college apprenticeships and add language to allocate funding to designated schools. Number six, add 17.5 million SGF for 2-year college student success initiatives and add language designating the amount each school is to receive. Number seven, add 5 million SGF for career technical education capital outlay. Number eight, add language to allocate SEDIF appropriations to designated schools. Number nine, add 10.5 million SGF for the technical college operating grant. Number 10, add 3.3 million SGF for the Washburn University Municipal Operating Grant. 11, add 2.2 million SGF for the Kansas Osteopathic Scholarship. 12, delete the transfer of 32.7 SGF to the Kansas Campus Restoration Act Fund. And number 13 was a notation. The Budget Committee believes that the agency request, the K-Board's agency request for several items pertaining to appropriations and language should be considered in fiscal year 25 and 26. The Budget Committee recommends the House Committee on Appropriations consider this adjustment or these adjustments when looking at the budget. Mr. Chairman, I will stand for any questions.
All right, thank you, Chairman. So there's a lot of ads for 2-year colleges. Can you kind of explain those? And it was in my knowledge that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but in House Bill 2007, that those were omitted, and so they needed to be added back in. But if you can explain those, please.
Yes, that is correct. So the Budget Committee basically restored funding for the community and technical college that the funding they've received for multiple years related to business and industry apprenticeship programs to help ensure students complete their certificates and degrees and connect them to the Kansas workforce. The committee also consolidated all of the capital outlay money that had been in the budget for the community and technical colleges for multiple years and to, I guess, make for a more equitable distribution of funds with each school getting a small base and the rest of the funding, which was divided by a number of technical education full-time equivalents at each college. The committee also restored the operating grant to the technical colleges so they too can ensure that they continue to meet workforce and industry needs. So additionally, the committee also supported fully funding the cost model for courses delivered at our community colleges and technical colleges, including career and technical education programs. So that's kind of a brief overview, but if the committee has any questions on any specific one, I'd be glad to speak to it.
Okay, we'll see if there's any further questions, but thank you for the explanation as to why we're seeing those ads in there. I mean, they're sizable ads, but obviously, if we want to continue the education of the 2-year colleges, they will need to be in there. In the governor's budget and on a recommendation, there was going to be an EDIF swap, and I'm indifferent on exactly if we want to do this or not, but I'm saying that the Budget Committee did not take the governor's recommendation of the items that is with EDIF, approximately $4.2 million, having that being funded by state general fund dollars as opposed to the Economic Development Initiatives Fund. So by your recommendation, it's still staying with the EDIF fund, but was there any discussion regarding that?
Mr. Chairman, unfortunately not on that specific one. This was part of a larger amendment, so there was about 5 different items in it, and that was one of them, but we didn't have the opportunity to dive into that. I know there's some concerns with the structure of EDIF and whatnot, so I would defer, obviously, to you, Mr. Chairman, if you have any recommendations on a better way to do that.
Well, as I mentioned before, I'm indifferent on it. Obviously, if we take the $4.2 million, we're funding it with state general fund dollars, as the governor has in her budget. But that would also leave $4.2 million for available resources that we could address economic development initiatives for the state of Kansas. We'll probably have this discussion when we're at a later date when we're putting the budget together, starting the week of February 10th. But I was just kind of wondering if there was any discussion in regards to that, in regards to what the governor's recommendation has been. Representative Ballard. Chairman Howell.
Mr. Chairman, as I understand it,
Thought I
it's
did.
the State Economic Development Incentive Fund, but please correct me if I'm wrong.
Is that what it is?
Staff is saying that is correct.
Okay. And I think my other one I would have to look at is number 12, delete the transfer of the 32 million of the Kansas Campus Restoration Act Fund. What fund is that, please?
Chairman Howell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I understand it, this Kansas Campus Restoration Act Fund was established by the 2024 legislature through authorizing legislation. It basically authorized a mechanism to where higher education institutions could be eligible for funding for restoration projects to address deferred maintenance on their campus. It could involve the demolition of, buildings that are not up to standard, and the Board of Regents has an inventory of all of the buildings at all of the Regent institutions, and they grade them depending on a number of factors. And so so this was a bill, I believe, originated in the Senate and adopted by both chambers and signed into law by the governor. As I understand it, it's a 6-year program or 6-year law. And if the legislature doesn't step in to adjust numbers, then those those transfers of monies automatically go to the Board of Regents for distribution towards campus restoration. So,
And not to interject, Representative Ballard, but it was the first transfer July 1, 2025, or 24?
24.
26. The first one is 26, okay.
So the amount, it hasn't been spent yet. It is to be appropriated.
Chairman Howell.
as I understand it in the motion before the committee yesterday, it was to delete the transfer of the fiscal year 26 monies, the 32.7 million.
Representative Ballard.
Thank you. Was there a specific reason why you wanted to delete it when we know that restoration and we're way behind on just trying to solve some of those problems on all campuses?
Chairman Howell.
Thank you for the question, Representative. There was an extensive discussion. We were trying to cover a number of issues in a fairly tight amount of time yesterday, so we didn't get to go too deep into discussion about that specifically. I think maybe primarily the motivation was looking at the overall amount and with the concern of our state spending, that's a big bucket of money. And so sometimes those bigger buckets of money can be an easy target. So I'm not going to speak on behalf of the member in my committee that offered the amendment, but I got the feeling that it had to do more with dollars and cents than it did the overall program. So this wouldn't delete it for fiscal year 27 or 28 or 29. This is specifically for fiscal year 26.
Okay.
Well,
Thank you, Ms.
and I was going to say, I didn't have any input in regards to this, something that was done by the committee, but what I've been telling people when they've been meeting with me in my office is, due to the tax plan that we passed during special session last year and adjustments that we're needing to make to the budget, there are some things that we may just have to, and I use the word pause on, for fiscal year 2026, so we can see what exactly is going to be, what's going to happen with the tax plan that we passed last year. We'll have a full year of implementation when we come back next year, when we look at the budget for fiscal year 2027. And then also, I think everybody is pretty much aware, there's been a lot of activity going on in the last few days, last week, in regards to the federal government. And so this also gives us time to see exactly what approaches will be made with the federal government in regards to drawing down federal dollars, the matching dollars the state may need to contribute, or how much those changes may be impacting the state budget. Like I said, this was an action made by the committee, but I tend to agree, with almost $33 million that was going to be transferred out. Maybe this next fiscal year, we just wait and see what actually transpires within the next fiscal year. And then, as the chairman said, it does not stop the transfer that it was in the legislation for 27, 28, and 29. And depending what happens in the out years, we can have this transfer authorized. So we do have the full implementation of the bill that was passed last year. I just kind of wanted to make those comments.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Chairman Howell. Appreciate it.
Vice Chair Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And this is quite a list, so I wanted to take a moment and make sure that I'm understanding it. First of all, what was the net impact of your recommendations? I was trying to do the math, and I think it might be 28 million, but I'm not sure.
Chairman Howell.
We would need a minute or two to pull up the exact amount, but if I'm looking at fiscal year 26 on page 3, so in that table under all other funds, it says agency, LBC, and House. There's 94.7 million. And for the House, that would be the recommendation of the Higher Education Budget Committee, the 62 million. So I think the difference there would be the Campus Restoration Act funding. So that's a decrease there, but I would have to get with staff on the other adjustments to get you a specific number on that.
Vice Chair Williams.
Okay, thank you. Because one thing I would love for you to be able to do right now is, we're looking at a list of enhancement requests, and then we're looking at your list. And maybe if we could just take a moment and go through those, because, for example, your first recommendation is delete $10 million for the Kansas blueprint. That is in the base budget, so it's not enhancement. We wouldn't find it on there. But perhaps if you could walk us through the enhancements compared to yours so we can mark off the ones so that we can see which enhancements were included in this list without us tracking, because we don't see a side-by-side comparison. So it's difficult to follow which ones were base budget, which ones were absolutely new, and which ones were from the enhancements. Could you do that for us?
Chairman Howell.
I can try my best if I'm understanding correctly. So the first one, Kansas Blueprint for Literacy, that's a deletion, as you had mentioned, that was apparently in the base budget. However, there's been concern or question whether that was the intent of the legislature to be recurring at 10 million every year. So that's neither here nor there, but that was some conversation that was had by some members of the committee. Number 2, add 3.9 million SGF for tuition, technical education. So that was removed, I believe, from the LBC's budget, and so we've added that back in. Same with number 3. That was add back. Number 4 was the deletion. That was because that's attributable to, I should say, lower enrollment for general education courses at two-year institutions. More students are taking the technical course load and coursework, so that we had to adjust that down to reflect that change. Number 5, the add 14.3. That's funding that's been in prior year's budgets, I believe, and it was added back in after it was not included in the LBC recommendation. Same thing for number 6. That has been funded previously, but was not included in the HB 2007. Same with 7. 8, I'm uncertain of how that was, because that's adding language. But I believe that is a funding stream that the two-year institutions have received before through the SEDIF appropriations. Number 9, 10.5 million SGF for the technical college operating grant. That's money that they've received for at least two years. It was in last year's budget bill. It was not included in the LBC recommendations, so that was added back. Number 10, add 3.3 million SGF for the Washburn Municipal Operating Grant. That is new money. So Washburn University, being a municipal university, they rely on some state support, but they have a local sales tax as well to help fund the operations of the school. But then there's a municipal operating grant. It's a line item in the KBOR budget in every budget year. And so that adjustment is to reflect their increased enrollment and growth. I think from year to year, they grew. From year to year, the enrollment increased by 27%. So they're having a lot of need to adjust for the increase in enrollment. And 11, the Kansas Osteopathic Scholarship. That was added last year. This osteopathic scholarship program has been around since the 1970s. Unfortunately, the legislature hasn't really funded it for many, many years. And it has been only been able to give out a few scholarships because they've relied on repayments. So if someone received a scholarship, entered into a service agreement to come back to a underserved area or a rural area of Kansas to practice medicine, and they didn't fulfill their obligations, then the Board of Regents would have to put them basically into a collections type thing, and they would get repayment, and those repayments would go back into the scholarship program. So it wasn't a very good way to do the scholarship program. And now with us having an in-state osteopathic school of medicine, the legislature last year thought it was important to prioritize that. So we added 2.2 million last year. And this 2.2 million is just to restore it. I believe it is in the governor's budget as well.
Yeah, it is reflective in the governor's recommendation. And as I mentioned before, some of these larger items are things that we've done for the two-year colleges in previous years. And it appears to be adding, but it's what we've done in the previous years, and it was just omitted in the House Bill under the action of the Special Committee on Legislative Budget. Washburn falls under the Board of Regents because we don't have a separate line item budget like we do with University of Kansas, Kansas State University, and so that's why Washburn rolls into the budget for the Board of Regents, just as the community colleges and the technical schools. Any further questions? Representative Sutton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, with regard to Washburn, what is the increase in enrollment on a percentage basis? You have that handy?
He said 27%.
27% increase in enrollment?
Yes.
Okay. Year over year?
I don't know if that's year over year, but Chairman Howe, I'm remembering your comments, you said it was 27%, but.
Right, is that over a decade or a week? What are we talking about?
I may have to go back to look at that, but 27% is sticking in my mind, and that might be in growth in the freshman class year to year, but I would have to look if that also is for the total enrollment. So let me get you a number on that.
Certainly, and I'll look forward to seeing that. My question based on that is, I'm curious about the business model here. We have increased customers, perhaps up to as much as 27% in a year, and that requires a 20% increase in subsidy. Certainly that doesn't flow in a private sector mindset, so I'm a little curious about the business model, why having increased customers who are paying tuition requires then an increase in a subsidy from the state. That doesn't make sense to me. It would kind of, in my mind, think that that subsidy should go down.
Chairman Howe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Valid question for sure. You know, you'd think with additional tuition revenues that would kind of offset some of those things, but I suppose it's kind of a wash when you add in inflation and other factors, and the fact that the legislature hasn't probably adjusted their base operating grant for, I would have to go back with staff to see how many years it's been, but I think it's been a while. So,
So we're using the inflation card now, is that it?
yeah, actually, without further information, Mr. Chair.
I want to see how many line items we see that in through other budgets throughout the state. The point here that I'm making, or that I'm aiming for, is that we already funded $14 million a year, as I recall, in that neighborhood anyway. And so we see a 20% increase going to over 17 million. That based on success. Wait, they're successful, so we increase. It doesn't make sense to me. I would also, and speaking of flawed business models, did I understand you correctly when you said that the Kansas Osteopathic Scholarship Fund was funded based on the failure of the program?
Chairman Howe.
It's my understanding that, you know, previously the Kansans that wanted to go to osteopathic school of medicine, they could do so, but they could go anywhere, you know, but we didn't have one in the state of Kansas. And so they could go out of state, then, you know, eventually hopefully come back. And that was the idea at the time when it originated. But now that we have our own in state, this program allows them to choose that one, or they could still go out of state, but then still have that obligation to come back. But I think the advantage of having an in-state school, osteopathic school, is that people usually stay closer to home if they can. But once they're gone, we tended to lose them. So yeah, you're correct that it seemed to be funded by its own failure to retain people to Kansas.
Representative Sutton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If that isn't a state program, nothing is, by golly. Funding it based on its failure. I think maybe we need to take a bigger look at that entire scholarship fund. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Vice Chairman Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So did your committee discuss, Representative Sutton brought up the enrollment rate. Did your committee discuss enrollment rates? And did you discuss whether that's declining enrollment or increasing enrollment, increasing costs per pupil, decreasing costs per pupil? And one interesting way to really look at it that maybe we have overlooked in the past, on-campus enrollment versus online enrollment, because we want to make sure that there's parity in what we're doing.
Chairman Howe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the question. Vice Chair, we did not have an in-depth discussion about enrollment. We're limited on time, unfortunately. I would have loved to have that conversation. I do know I did have the president of Fort Hays State University in my office yesterday, and I can speak to them because I know specifically their numbers. Enrollment has increased on campus for them, but they've lost some enrollment with online. Online is much more competitive than it was 5-10 years ago. And so that's a challenge for each of the institutions, is offering the online education.
Vice Chair Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I think this is an important conversation, and I hope you'll have time later to dive into it. There are some documents provided by KBOR on this. I would love for the committee to actually review it, because it appears to me that overall enrollment over a 5-year period for our 7 universities is declining by 12%. Community colleges, 13%. There are some outliers in that. And that doesn't really take into account those that are just on campus, because those are declining at a much more significant rate, even as high as 63% on campus versus online. So I think that's something I would love for you guys to look at. And the other thing that was interesting to me is the cost per pupil. And between our community colleges, between all of our colleges, if you look at all the state and local funding, you might be surprised at what is or what isn't a value. And at some point, I think the legislature should take a hard look at that. Thank you.
Representative Hoy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to look at the first adjustment for the Kansas Blueprint for Literacy. SB 438 did pass last year, and it was funded for 2025. And I can't speak to all of our legislative intent, but when I supported that bill and the funding, I did believe that it was going to be included in the budget again for this year. This program is extremely important for our students because it's educating educators and adopting the science of reading and how we teach teachers to teach kids to read. It also helps recognize dyslexia, and I did hear this morning on the way in on NPR, they were talking about the NAEP scores, and we are not right now on the path to total recovery from reading loss and other issues for our students post-pandemic. So I think that this is important now more than ever, and I would like to make a motion to add $10 million SGF for the Kansas Blueprint for Literacy for FY 2026.
All right, committee, you heard the motion. Is there a second? Seconded by Representative Ballard. Discussion on the motion, Chairman Howe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So when the Budget Committee deleted this, it sounds harsh, we deleted it. However, I'm still in conversations with stakeholders to see if we can address some concerns that have been brought to my attention about the program. And, those conversations are ongoing. So I would oppose this at this current juncture, and I would pledge that to work with members of the legislature and other stakeholders to see if we can come up with a solution when we work the budget, maybe on the week of February 10th.
So do you plan on having some type of hearing prior to February 10th, or would it be after you have all your budget reports done?
Thank you for the question, Chairman. So primarily this authorizing legislation did not come through my committee last year, so we're the budget committee. And so that would be another committee that handled the authorizing language. I would have to refer to Chair Estes on that, the Education Committee. But I have had conversations in the last day, I guess, since we had our committee yesterday, people very concerned. And I don't think it was the intent or anybody on the committee had any motivation for us not to address childhood literacy. It's the way it's perhaps being implemented, the amount of money, and things of that nature. So we want an opportunity to, or at least I want an opportunity as chair of this budget committee to have those conversations, see if we can come back to the table, address some of those concerns, and maybe come back to appropriations with a proposal. But I don't want to speak out of turn because, Mr. Chair, that authorizing legislation wasn't under my jurisdiction last year.
Representative Estes, do you have any comments since the chairman referenced your committee?
Thank you. This is a unique situation in the Senate. They do policy and K through 12 and higher ed budget all in one committee. We do not. And I concur that there needs to be further talk. I think literacy is very important. And I like the timeline that you laid out. So I concur with Chairman Howe.
Representative Wassinger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Excuse me. From what I understand, we already do all the things that Blueprint for Literacy is calling for to put millions of dollars in. We already do it in schools, the STEPS program and others. I think the chair of education could add to that. But as I heard the discussion from various people, we do not need to add another layer of government to something that we're already working on. So COVID was a bad situation, but it extended far longer than it needed to, and I totally am against this motion. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Estes.
In regards to test scores, I have a spreadsheet. I've been monitoring our test scores trend that goes back to 2007, and we've been in a continual decline, and literacy is important. I think it's important that we spend our money very carefully, very wisely, and I think time would be our friend here. So again, I concur with Chairman Howe. I oppose this motion.
Well, and I was going to make this comment before the motion was made, but I think it's prudent that I make it now as well. I mean, obviously, we're in a condensed calendar in regards to the budget report out, it's getting the budget out, sending it over to the Senate, have them make their modifications to it. However, when we're concluding with the budget process, that does not mean that the budget committees are not going to meet. The full intent is that the budget committees will have informational hearings, have hearings on items like this one. And then we had just discussed yesterday in the agenda planning, and also I discussed this with my weekly meeting with the speaker yesterday, that there may be a need for a small, and I'm going to reiterate, a small trailer bill that we can address some issues, tie things up, and then make sure that we have everything as far as the components of the budget there, and possibly these would be items that we would discuss after we're able to have some hearings in regards to these particular items. I just want to make that statement and that comment that after the week of February the 10th, when we get our budget out, and right now it looks like the anticipation is that we're going to be having the budget debated on the House floor with one of the 3 days prior to turnaround. After that, the budget committees are still going to work, and they're still going to meet, and they're going to have informational hearings on items. And then, as I mentioned, there's the hope and anticipation that there may be some type of cleanup or trailer bill that will occur by this body and then be passed on the House floor. Representative Ballard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a clarification of the chairman. Did I hear you say that this is an area you would like to explore further, that it's not totally closed right now?
Chairman Howe.
Thank you for the question. based off of the people that have come to me since our budget committee made the deletion recommendation, I think it's worthy of discussion, and it's an opportunity to hear not only their concerns, but the concerns of members of the legislature, because I know there's concerns out there. I don't know what they all are, and I am not an expert on this program because my committee did not go through the testimony and pass out a bill to the House last year. So we're just looking at the budgets. We know there's concerns. I'm glad to have those conversations over the next coming days.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any further discussion on the motion? Representative Amix.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I am obviously somebody that's going to be very supportive of the motion that's been made because I'm so supportive of the program. I think it's one of the wisest investments that we can make in kids in our state. I am somebody that's going to work to push the chairman a little bit to, depending on the outcome of this, to work hard on this and probably other items that come before the committee that we can have further discussions on budget items. But this one here, I think, is so extremely important to young people in our state. So I'm gonna be supporting it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Vice Chair Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Not to belabor the subject, but I mean, I think that what we're talking about is getting the money to the right groups of individuals and getting the money to the teachers so that they can get the training that they need. I don't understand why we would want to reappropriate appropriate an additional $10 million for the universities for their schools of education when their job is to teach literacy. What are they teaching? What are we paying for when we send money to the universities if that's not what they're teaching? They're teaching future teachers every single year, and they've done that for, certainly for a long, long time. And I'm being a graduate of that. So why are we having to pay them more to do what they've already should be doing? We did it once. They set up a program. And I would also note that Phillips Learning Center is an expert in this field of dyslexia and letters training and all of those things. They were not included in this in any way, shape, or form that I am aware. And so again, if we're going to spend the money, let's take that deep dive and find out where can it best be used. And teacher training is the most important place. And it's the universities, putting it back in the universities doesn't seem to me the best place for it. Thank you.
Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, Representative Hoy, you may close.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We didn't just task the universities with changing this. There's also the Blueprint for Literacy Commission. There is additional work that we are asking, and I know my school district, Shawnee Mission School District, does have a program where they are training educators, and then they'll train, it's like a train the trainer sort of situation. So our local school districts are addressing this as well. This blueprint for literacy could be similar to an unfunded mandate if we're not helping them to address the change in curriculum for those educators. And considering if this item does not, if this motion does not pass, and I assume hopefully then there would be an informational hearing and truly to do a deeper dive if that is what is determined is needed, something I would not be able to attend. And this would be something beneficial personally to my family, for my nephew who has dyslexia, and I have seen closer hand how this is impacting kids in our schools. Our educators are doing their absolute best, but as a previous representative did mention that this was an issue before the pandemic as well. I think the reason that we're hearing about the pandemic years is because we all assume there would be some learning loss there, but I think that helping teachers to recognize this and change the way we're teaching is a large task. And it is something that needs this funding, and we cannot leave teachers and families completely on their own to make this adaptation without funding it. And I stand behind my vote on supporting this bill last year, and I'm going to back it up with the funding. I close and move my motion. Thank you.
All right, committee, you've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
The noes appear to have it. The noes do have it. Motion fails. We're back on the budget for the Board of Regents. Representative Wassinger? You're good? Okay. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Chairman Howe, I would entertain a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will comment briefly. It's a 17.1 million addition to what the LBC recommended. I think that was a previous question. I move that the House Committee on Appropriations adopt the appropriations for the Kansas Board of Regents for fiscal year 25 revised, fiscal year 26 as provided in HB 2007.
All right, committee, you've heard the motion, seconded by Representative Amix. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, motion passes. All right, Chairman Howe, we have added the State Library for today, so if you go ahead and do the State Library.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll direct the committee's attention to the Budget Committee report for the State Library. So for fiscal year 2025, the agency requested a revised estimate of 7.4 million, including 5.2 million SGF in fiscal year 25 and 29.5 FTE positions. The revised estimate is $66,644, below the amount approved by the 24 legislature. The agency did not include any supplemental requests in fiscal year 25. The LBC concurred with the agency's revised estimate in fiscal year 25 with the following adjustments: to delete $150,272 SGF to lapse appropriations for licensing the database, nursing education, and video, and the creation of a new website in fiscal year 25. All reappropriation lapses will be reconsidered during the 25 legislative session. The Budget Committee concurred with the LBC's recommendation in fiscal year 25 with the following adjustment. Number one, to add $150,272 SGF for the reappropriation for licensing the database, nursing education, and video, and creation of a new website in fiscal year 25. Mr. Chair, I'll stand for any questions for fiscal year 25.
Committee, any questions in regards to fiscal year 2025? All right, seeing none, Chairman Howe, you may move on to 2026.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The agency requested $8 million, including $5.8 million SGF and 29.5 FTE positions in fiscal year 26. This is an all funds increase of $699,480, or almost 10%, and an SGF increase of $764,000, or 15% above the FY25 approved amount. The agency submits a one-time enhancement request to increase both the base amount and formula allocation to the state grants and aids to libraries. This would increase the state grants and aid to 2.6 million SGF for fiscal year 26. The LBC concurred with the agency's revised estimate for fiscal year 26 with the following adjustment: to delete the $747,000 SGF for state grants and aids to libraries, and not to increase the base amount and the formula allocation for fiscal year 26. The Budget Committee concurred with the LBC's recommendation for fiscal year 26 with the following adjustment: to delete an additional $486,000 SGF for state grants and aid to libraries, and delete the proviso language in HB 2007 regarding a base amount of $1,000 to each eligible library and the base amount for each regional library system for fiscal year 2026. Mr. Chairman, I'll stand for any questions.
All right, committee, any questions in regard to fiscal year 2026? Representative Estes.
I'm sorry, I was going to try to talk to you about something else. My bad.
Representative Ballard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. May I ask you, did you have a lengthy discussion about taking away the 486 grants and aids to, it looks like a lot of libraries.
Chairman Howe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the discussion, I guess, has been ongoing for a couple years. But in this year's budget discussion, you know, there was a proviso added to the, I believe, the mega budget bill last year. And I think it came from the Senate, and it was to adjust the state aid and grants, or state grants and aid to libraries. So there was a per capita increase of 28 cents per capita to 30 cents per capita. Then there was an increase, well, not an increase, but a new base amount that was established to give each library in the system that was eligible $1,000 as a base amount. So that was a proviso added by the Senate. The House didn't have that position last year, but it did make it in the budget bill. So this year, the agency was requesting a per capita increase, I believe, from the 30 cents to 39 cents, and to increase the base amount from $1,000 to $2,000. So the Legislative Budget Committee did not accept that agency enhancement and kept it at the level it was approved in last year's budget. But my budget committee decided we wanted to take away the base amount. So that's what was removed. I've tried to encourage, and I don't know if, in terms of working with the state library, and they've been great to work with. I've had conversations with them, and I've been learning about the library system and the history and how it's set up. But I think it warrants a larger discussion of how we fund our libraries in the state of Kansas. And you'd have to change statute in order to permanently increase the amount of funding that they're receiving. So the Senate took the approach last year to do it by proviso, and I think it warrants a bigger discussion. The committee thought, you know, we don't need to be spending additional money in this budget environment, and so that's, I think, why it was targeted, the base amount.
Another item for you to add on having an informational hearing after
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
the beginning of March and turnaround. Any further discussion in regards to fiscal year 2026? Seeing none, Chairman Howe.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, I didn't have my specific language sheet on how to make a motion under this new budget, but I'll attempt to make one. I move the House Committee on Appropriations accept the Budget Committee report for fiscal year 25 and 26 as provided in HB 2007.
For the state library.
The state library.
All right, committee, you've heard the motion, seconded by Representative Amix. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes appear to have it. Ayes do have it. Motion passes. All right, thank you, Chairman Howe. We'll now move on to K through 12 education budget, and I'll be Chairman Getz, and I believe you'll be starting with the Kansas State School for the Blind. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Start with the Kansas State School for the Blind. It's located in Kansas City, Kansas. KSSB's mission is to serve as a catalyst and leader in the development of exemplary programs and practices in vision services for students up to age 21. Aims to build local capacity throughout the state via strategic partnerships with local schools, parents, and communities to ensure learners with visual impairments are able to assume responsible roles in society and lead fulfilling lives. Then we'll jump over to the committee report. It's where the agency requests a revised estimate in 2025 of $14.2 million, including $8.4 million SGF in expenditures and 89.5 FTE positions in fiscal year 25. This is a net decrease of 756,797, or 5.1% below the agency's approved amount. The decrease is due to the agency budgeting less for contractual services with general fee funds and other special revenue funds. The agency submits one supplemental request for 25 to recover unspent funds in their extended school year. This was actually in my region. The agency reports they were unable to secure a location in Dodge City in the time span between the receipt of funds and when the summer program started. As a result, the funding lapsed. So there was additionally an agency request reappropriation language to be added. LBC deleted both of those, the lapsed funds and the reappropriation language, and the Budget Committee concurs with the LBC's recommendation for 2025. Stand for questions.
Committee, are there questions for the chairman in regards to fiscal year 2025? Seeing none, you may move on to 2026.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 2026, the agency requested $14.8 million, including $8.3 million, 89.5 FTEs for 26. This is a net decrease of 166 to 227, 1.1% below 25. The agency's request includes 4 enhancement requests for capital improvements, including the base amount of the rehab and repair, adding and abating hazardous material, a gas line service, and renovate part of the Johnson building that houses the new inclusive early childhood program. LBC deleted all requests, and the Budget Committee added back to abate hazardous material found in the campus, and to this particular gas service line actually ran under where students were. It was in between 2 buildings, but they adjoined those buildings to where now it's directly under student services. So we decided to add that into, and these come from the State Institutional Building Fund, and with all appropriations between the State School for the Blind, or the School for the Blind and School for the Deaf, there would still be over $8 million left to appropriate out of that fund with everything that is being requested in 2026. So with that, I'll stand for questions.
All right, thank you, Chairman. So if we look at the governor's recommendation, you did 2 of the 3, because she went ahead and added the $470,000 from the State Institution Building Fund for the Johnson Building. And maybe you said it, but you give the rationale again for why the committee did not do the $470,000?
There was a question around, they got an appropriation to make a plan for the daycare, but we didn't feel confident around that they were ready to proceed, and we wanted to take care of some of the other things first and revisit this next year, and that they could come back with some more hearty answers on what they were going to do and who all this was going to serve. It would be a mixed use for special education students or not, impaired students and regular students. And we just didn't know if that was really in their purview. And we wanted to do some checking this year and bring it back next year.
Any further questions in regard to fiscal year 2026? Seeing none, Chairman, you may entertain a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move the Committee on K-12 Budget recommend to the House Committee on Appropriations to adopt the appropriations for the Kansas School of the Deaf for fiscal year 25 and fiscal year 26 as provided for in HB 2007.
And just for the motion, it is the School of the Blind.
School
Yes,
for the
right.
Blind, sorry.
I believe you said deaf, so that's coming up next.
I did.
All right. Seconded by Representative Mosier. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Opposed? All right, motion passes. Chairman Getz. Now the School for the Deaf.
Get my papers out here. Get my papers adjusted. Jump right into the committee reports. On page 2, agency request a revised estimate 16.8 million, including 12 million SGF in expenditures. This is an all funds decrease of 1.1 million. And I really like this section, or 6.1% below the agency's fiscal year 25 approved amount. And this is due to the agencies receiving less than anticipated special revenue funds and the agency reducing their budgeted expenditures. The agency deleted 5.8 unfunded FTEs, which I know is a popular thing with us. The LBC concurs with the agency's revised request for 25. The Budget Committee concurred with LBC's recommendation with the following adjustment. So the LBC said that they could keep this $156,000 in the language assessment program account, but there's $399,000 funding that account. And so we didn't want to come back and have, another $200,000 the next year. So we made the recommendation just to put it in their general operating funds, to spread that out over different accounts, to spend it on things that they're either trying to fix in rehab. They have pretty old campuses, or staffing, anything they needed to use it for, instead of just limiting it to the language assessment program. Stand for questions for 2025.
Committee, any questions in regard to 2025? Representative Hoy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do want to clarify then, if there were additional language assessment program needs that transfer to SGF, they would still be able to use it for that, should it be needed?
Chairman?
Yes, it was, they can still use it for language assessments.
Any further questions in regards to 2025? All right, seeing none, we may move on to 2026.
2026, the agency requests $17.8 million, including $12.4 million SGF, 140.6 FTE positions in 26. This is a net increase of $62,000, or 0.4% above the amount approved in 25. Agency's requests include enhancement requests for capital improvements, including increase the base of the rehab and repair, repairs on the utility service tunnels, abating hazardous material, and new campus gas service line. LBC deleted all these in total of $765,000. The Budget Committee went back and had unanimous on 1, 2, and 3 for the service tunnels, the hazardous material, and the gas line. The committee was not unanimous on adding the $350,000 for the roof replacement. Again, I will mention this is not SGF. This is State Institutional Building Fund, which has, even with spending all of this, will have over $8 million in it. And the only other note is this is that $350,000, I think what went to the decision so much, it's a gravel roof. I don't know if you've ever been around flat gravel roofs. They're very, very old. It's over 30 years old. And the person they had there talking to us talked about how he wanted to update that as soon as possible. So we voted out that they could. I'll stand for questions.
All right, committee, are there any questions in regards to 2026? Representative Sutton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. How long have we been repairing this utility service tunnel? It seems to me like this has been popping up for a while.
Chairman Getz.
Reports are that this is the second year.
It's only the second? Wow, it all runs together. What are we doing to it? We couldn't repair it in a year. What are we doing to it?
Chairman Getz.
From what they informed us, it runs a long ways, and they're doing it in sections. They can't do it all at the same time, just for continuity of the campus, and so they have to take it sections at a time.
Representative Sutton.
Okay, I'd like a picture. That construction project, how is working on a service tunnel disrupting the continuity of the campus?
Chairman Getz?
I was informed that they had one collapse last year, and so they fixed that one last year, and then the one, it goes under a parking lot, and so with parking and just different things, they wanted to fix the one that fell in last year and fix the one under the parking lot this year.
Sounds like a reasonable priority, one that
Yeah.
collapsed. Okay, I could probably deal with that. And then if I could continue just a little bit,
You may.
hazardous materials, what are we talking about?
Chairman Getz?
I wanted to confirm, but it's mostly asbestos.
Of course it is. Yeah, that's, I assumed that as well. How many years are we going to just let that reside around our students? And this isn't the first year we're removing asbestos either. We're taking this seriously, or we're just kind of piecemealing this one too? We are talking about a carcinogen.
Chairman Getz?
I appreciate the comment. I think that's why we appropriated so much to try and attack these things continually and get them done.
Continually is my concern. That's why aren't we done? That would seem to me to be a priority, something we'd want to actually achieve rather than budget for every single year.
Chairman Getz?
Yeah, with asbestos, they have a multi-year plan that has, with the building institution committee, they have a 5-year plan, and almost every time that you go and renovate an old school, there's asbestos. And so everything that they're hitting, they're having to add this to whatever they're reconstructing.
Representative Sutton?
Okay.
So it's an underlying consequence of doing, then they're finding the asbestos when they go in, and then the funds aren't there to remove it, so that's why they're coming back and asking for it.
They know it's there almost every time that they are going to do a construction project, but they also, with the collapsing tunnel, let's take care of this, and then added it to the plan to take care of under the parking lot.
Representative Sutton?
I'm just concerned about our renovation contracts. If we already know it's there, why is that not baked into the renovation contract in the first place? Why are we continually piecemealing away the SIBF? And granted, it flies under the radar here because it's not SGF, but we just keep adding it in there. Why is that not part of the renovation contract?
I don't know if Chairman Getz can answer that question.
I know that's not directed at you. I'm just, I find it frustrating. That's all. I find it frustrating. We have these recurring costs for things that we absolutely know are going to occur, and they should have been baked in the first place. We shouldn't have to come back and do this every single year. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any further discussion on 2026? Representative Ousley.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Representative Sutton, for the questions. I might try to add just a little bit of light on this, as we know that the School for the Deaf and School for the Blind are both maintained by the same O&M department, and they seem to, really take on what they can tackle in that fiscal year when they come to us and ask for these appropriations. I will say the State Building Construction Committee meets today at noon, and we'll go over this, so we haven't had a time to dive into that upon that committee, and if you would like, I can report back with information after that.
He said he loves it.
Thank you.
So you didn't read his lips. Any other discussion in regards to fiscal year 2026 for the School for the Deaf? Seeing none, Chairman Getz, I would entertain a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that the Committee on K-12 Budget recommend to the House Committee on Appropriations to adopt the appropriations for the Kansas School for the Deaf for fiscal year 2025 and 2026 as provided for in HB 2007.
All right, committee, you've heard the motion. Is there a second? Second by Representative Mosier. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Motion passes. Okay, before we adjourn, I believe Representative Estes has a comment for the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And just in relation to understanding the blueprint for literacy and the confusion, because even from the maker of the motion, I heard confusion. Training for the trainer by the district is actually being done by KSDE. So in my committee on January 16th and January 23rd, I had Dr. Lane present the blueprint. On January 20th and January 27th, I believe, I had Dr. Watson talk about what the State Department of Education is doing on literacy. If you might find it helpful to go and watch those on our legislative YouTube to understand the picture more fully.
All right. Thank you, Representative Estes. And before we adjourn, I just want to, hopefully everybody remembers that today is Kansas Day. So happy birthday to the great state of Kansas. And we are adjourned until 9 a.m.